Today we're going to construct our own nets. Our objective today is that we can construct nets of three-dimensional objects using the measurements of a solid's edges. Let's return to the cabinet example from yesterday. Now that we've represented different 3D figures as nets, we're going to go a little further today by including measurements and dimensions in our net drawings. You may notice that this cabinet is a rectangular prism. Take a moment to find the rectangular prism in your geometry kit. Take a moment to draw a quick sketch of this rectangular prism. Don't worry if it isn't perfect. This is just going to be used to help us label the dimensions of the figure. We know that rectangular prisms all have a height, length, and width. Even though we don't know the numbers associated with these measurements yet, go ahead and label the height, length, and width of our sketch using the variables h, l, and w. Now unfold the rectangular prism so that we are viewing its net form. Trace this net on your paper as well. Make sure you draw lines where the net folds. We're now viewing the entire surface area of our rectangular prism. While this figure looks more complex, the dimensions will remain the same so long as we remember how the figure unfolded. Here, I've labeled all the side lengths that represent the height of our original prism. I've also outlined them using darker lines to make it easier to see. Take a moment to imagine how this net folds back together so that each of these lines represents the height of our prism. Now let's label every side that equals the width of the rectangular prism. Any remaining sides represent the length of our original prism. Go ahead and label those as well. This is a lot of information and looks pretty messy, but the point of this is to show you that if we know the length, width, and height of a rectangular prism, we know every dimension of its net as well. For example, if we wanted to find the area of the highlighted rectangle, all we would need to do is multiply the two dimensions that make it up. In this case, we would multiply height times width. Let's look back at the cabinet I want help painting. If I tell you that the length of the cabinet is 3 feet, the height is 2 feet, and the length is 1 foot, you should be able to label the different parts of our net. Because the cabinet forms a rectangular prism, we can use our rectangular prism from the geometry kit to represent it. Let's replace the length, width, and height with the dimensions of the cabinet. We can now apply the same information to our net. Go ahead and replace each variable with the appropriate value. We now have all the information we would need to solve for the surface area of this prism. Now, if we want to solve for the area of our highlighted rectangle, we would multiply 2 times 1. While this particular example is easy enough to solve, that's as far as we're going to go today. Remember that our objective today is only to construct nets that include three-dimensional figures' dimensions.